Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we're diving headfirst into a topic that's both fascinating and incredibly weird. Giant skeletons found right here in the United States. We're talking 8, 10, 12 feet tall, maybe even bigger. I mean, we've all heard the stories, seen the blurry pictures online, but is there any truth to them? And if so, what happened to the bones? That's what we're here to find out. We're gonna dig into some of the most compelling cases, from newspaper articles dating back over a century to first-hand accounts from people who claim they saw these giant skeletons with their own eyes. We're talking about discoveries from all over. Nevada, California, Texas, you name it. We're going to unpack the evidence, look at the potential cover-ups, and try to understand why these stories persist even today. We're going to talk about the Smithsonian Institution, their alleged role in all this, and why some people believe they've been hiding the truth about giants for over a century. Buckle up, folks, because this one is going to be wild. Our first stop takes us deep into the Nevada desert, where, legend has it, miners in the early 1900s stumbled upon a cave filled with the remains of giants. We're talking about reports of skeletons measuring over 12 feet tall, alongside weapons and artifacts that dwarfed anything found before. Now, the story goes that the Smithsonian Institution was immediately contacted and swooped in to collect the remains. The problem is, there's no official record of these findings. The Smithsonian denies ever receiving the skeletons, and the original reports, while widely circulated at the time, are dismissed by many as mere tall tales. But here's the thing. Those stories came from somewhere, right? People back then weren't carrying around smartphones to fake photos, and the sheer number of accounts from seemingly credible sources makes you wonder if there's more to this story than meets the eye. Think about it. If the government, or the Smithsonian, wanted to keep a lid on something like this, wouldn't they just make it disappear? Label it a hoax, hide the evidence, and hope everyone forgets about it. That's what makes this case so fascinating. It's like a puzzle with half the pieces missing. And the more you try to put it together, the more you realize how much we don't know. Let's move on to Ohio, a state with a rich history and more than its fair share of giant skeleton stories. I'm talking about hundreds of accounts dating back centuries, of massive skeletons unearthed by farmers, construction workers, you name it. One website, nephilimgents.net, claims to have documented over 125 separate reports of giant skeletons found in Ohio alone. Now, I know what you're thinking, anyone can make a website. But some of these accounts were published in local newspapers, documented by respected individuals at the time. For example, in 1871, the Cincinnati Enquirer ran a story about a group of explorers who discovered a giant skeleton inside a mound near Chillicothe. The skeleton was said to be over 10 feet tall, with a skull as big as a bushel basket. Then there's the story of the Miamisburg Mound, a massive burial mound near Dayton, Ohio. Legend has it that the mound contains the remains of a giant king buried with his treasures. Now, the Smithsonian has excavated the mound, but they claim to have found nothing out of the ordinary. But again, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Why are there so many stories, from so many different places and time periods, if there's nothing to them? It's a question that keeps popping up. And frankly, it's one that deserves a closer look. Now, I want to bring things a little closer to home, to a more recent example of potential archaeological shenanigans. In the late 1990s, a team of researchers exploring a cave in Oklahoma claimed to have stumbled upon something truly remarkable. A chamber filled with ancient artifacts, including tablets inscribed with strange writing and, you guessed it, giant skeletal remains. The website viewzone.com published an account of this discovery, complete with pictures of the artifacts and the cave entrance. However, shortly after the story broke, the researchers went silent. The cave's location was never disclosed, and the artifacts seemingly vanished. Now, some people believe this is a prime example of a modern-day cover-up, a deliberate attempt to suppress evidence that challenges our understanding of history. Others argue that the whole thing was a hoax, a way to generate publicity or maybe even make a quick buck. But here's the thing that gets me. Even if the Oklahoma cave story is a fabrication, it highlights a very real concern. If someone wanted to make evidence of giants disappear, wouldn't they use the same tactics? Silence the witnesses, discredit the findings, and hope the whole thing just fades away. It's a disturbing thought, but it's one that we have to consider as we delve deeper into this rabbit hole. Let's head east to New York, a state not typically associated with giants, but one with its fair share of intriguing stories. Richard Dewhurst, in his book The Lost Giants of New York, chronicles numerous accounts of giant skeletons unearthed throughout the state's history. One such account tells of a discovery near Seneca Lake in the 1870s, where workers digging a trench for a water main reportedly unearthed a massive skeleton, estimated to be over 8 feet tall. According to the story, the skeleton was quickly reburied, and its exact location remains a mystery to this day. Another intriguing tale comes from Buffalo, New York, where in the early 1900s, construction workers excavating for a building foundation allegedly uncovered a burial mound containing several giant skeletons. As the story goes, the skeletons were carted away by men in suits, never to be seen again. Now, these accounts are often dismissed as local folklore, exaggerated tales passed down through generations. But when you consider the sheer number of similar stories not just from New York but from across the country, it makes you wonder if there's something more to these legends. Could it be that giants once roamed the very land we live on today? And if so, what happened to their remains? These are questions that continue to fuel speculation and intrigue, reminding us that some chapters of history may be lost, but not entirely forgotten. Our journey takes us next to California, the Golden State, a land known for its sunshine beaches and, you guessed it, tales of giant skeletons. One of the most compelling accounts comes from Catalina Island, just off the coast of Los Angeles. In the early 1900s, amateur archaeologist Ralph Glidden claimed to have discovered a massive burial ground containing hundreds of skeletons, some measuring over 7 feet tall. Glidden even claimed to have found a skull so large that it could hold a bushel of wheat. Now, Glidden's findings were met with skepticism at the time, and unfortunately most of his collection was destroyed in a fire in the 1930s. But some researchers believe that Glidden's discoveries, while controversial, might hold clues to a forgotten chapter in California's history. And it's not just Catalina Island. Stories of giant skeletons have surfaced throughout California, from the redwood forests of the north to the deserts of the south. While many of these accounts are difficult to verify, they point to a persistent belief that giants once roamed this land. Some Native American tribes in California have oral traditions that speak of a race of giants who predated their own arrival. Could these legends be based on actual encounters with the remains of these ancient beings? It's a question that continues to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and anyone fascinated by the mysteries of the past. Everything's bigger in Texas, including, some say, the skeletons. The Lone Star State has its fair share of giant stories, with reports of massive skeletons found in caves, riverbeds, and even backyards. One of the most well-known cases comes from the town of Biloxi, Texas. In the 1930s, a series of massive footprints were discovered in the Biloxi riverbed, some measuring over 3 feet long and 8 inches deep. While initially attributed to dinosaurs, some researchers believe these tracks could be evidence of giant humans who coexisted with these prehistoric creatures. Now, the Biloxi tracks have been the subject of much debate, with some dismissing them as elaborate fakes, but the fact remains that these tracks exist, and their sheer size is difficult to ignore. But the Biloxi tracks are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to giant tales in Texas. There are stories of giant skeletons found near the Guadalupe Mountains, in East Texas, and even near the Alamo. While many of these accounts lack hard evidence, they point to a persistent belief in a time when giants roamed the Texas landscape. Could it be that these stories, passed down through generations, hold a kernel of truth? Or are they simply tall tales fueled by our fascination with the unknown? Whatever the answer, the giant mystery of Texas continues to capture the imagination. Our journey now takes us to Kentucky, a state known for its rolling hills bourbon, and, you guessed it, more tales of giant skeletons. One of the most intriguing accounts comes from a cave near Mount Vernon, Kentucky, where in the late 1800s a group of explorers claimed to have discovered a vast chamber containing hundreds of giant skeletons. According to the story, the skeletons were arranged in a circle, with their heads pointing inward, as if engaged in some ancient ritual. The explorers were said to have been so shaken by their discovery that they sealed the cave entrance and never spoke of it again. Now, like many of the stories we've discussed, the Mount Vernon cave account is difficult to verify, but it's one of many similar tales from Kentucky, a state with a rich history of cave exploration and Native American folklore. In fact, Some Native American tribes in Kentucky have oral traditions that speak of a race of giants who once inhabited the region. These giants were said to be incredibly strong and possessed of great wisdom. Could these legends be based on actual encounters with the remains of these ancient beings? While the evidence for giant skeletons in Kentucky may be largely anecdotal, the sheer number of stories passed down through generations suggests that there may be more to this mystery than meets the eye. Our next stop takes us to Wisconsin, the Badger State, where tales of giant skeletons are as much a part of the landscape as the cheese and beer. One of the most well-known accounts comes from the late 1800s, when a group of loggers working near Lake Delavan claimed to have unearthed a burial mound containing several giant skeletons. According to the story, the skeletons were over 8 feet tall, with skulls twice the size of a normal human. The loggers were said to have reburied the skeletons out of respect, and their exact location remains a mystery to this day. Another intriguing account comes from the town of West Bend, Wisconsin, where in the 1950s, construction workers excavating for a new school reportedly uncovered a giant skeleton, estimated to be over 10 feet tall. As the story goes, the skeleton was quickly whisked away by men in suits, and its whereabouts remain unknown. Now, these stories might sound like something out of a Hollywood movie, but they reflect a persistent belief in a time when giants roamed the Wisconsin landscape. Some Native American tribes in Wisconsin have oral traditions that speak of a race of giants who once inhabited the region. Could these legends be based on actual encounters with the remains of these ancient beings? While the evidence for giant skeletons in Wisconsin may be largely anecdotal, the sheer number of stories passed down through generations suggests that there may be more to this mystery than meets the eye. Let's head east to Pennsylvania, a state steeped in history, where the echoes of the past whisper tales of giants among the rolling hills and forests. One of the most compelling accounts comes from the Susquehanna River Valley, where, in the 1870s, a group of farmers claimed to have unearthed a burial mound containing numerous giant skeletons. According to the story, the skeletons ranged in height from 7 to 10 feet tall, with skulls as big as wash tubs. The farmers were said to have reburied the skeletons out of fear and superstition, and their exact location remains a mystery. Another intriguing tale comes from the Allegheny Mountains, where, in the early 1900s, a group of miners reportedly stumbled upon a cave filled with giant skeletons. The miners claimed that the skeletons were so large that they dwarfed their own bodies, and the cave floor was littered with massive bones. Now, these accounts are often dismissed as local folklore, exaggerated tales passed down through generations. But when you consider the sheer number of similar stories, not just from Pennsylvania but from across the country, it makes you wonder if there's something more to these legends. Could it be that giants once roamed the very land we live on today? And if so, what happened to their remains? These are questions that continue to fuel speculation and intrigue, reminding us that some chapters of history may be lost, but not entirely forgotten. Our final stop takes us to Illinois, the Prairie State, where whispers of giant skeletons echo through the cornfields and along the banks of the Mississippi River. One of the most intriguing accounts comes from the late 1800s, when a group of workers digging a well near the town of Alton, Illinois, claimed to have unearthed a massive skeleton, estimated to be over 12 feet tall. According to the story, the skeleton was so large that it took 8 men to lift it out of the well. The workers were said to have been so terrified by their discovery that they reburied the skeleton and swore never to speak of it again. Another compelling tale comes from the banks of the Illinois River, where, in the early 1900s, a group of fishermen claimed to have discovered a giant skull embedded in the riverbank. The skull was said to be so large that it could hold a bushel basket, and its teeth were as long as a man's fingers. Now, these stories might sound like something out of a campfire tale, but they reflect a persistent belief in a time when giants roamed the Illinois landscape. Some Native American tribes in Illinois have oral traditions that speak of a race of giants who once inhabited the region. Could these legends be based on actual encounters with the remains of these ancient beings? While the evidence for giant skeletons in Illinois may be largely anecdotal, the sheer number of stories passed down through generations suggests that there may be more to this mystery than meets the eye. So there you have it, folks. A journey through some of the most compelling and downright strange tales of giant skeletons ever reported in America. Now, I'm not saying I believe every single story, but I am saying there's a lot of smoke out there for there to be no fire. The sheer volume of accounts, the consistency across different states and time periods, and the alleged involvement of institutions like the Smithsonian, it all adds up to a mystery that deserves a closer look. Maybe there's a perfectly rational explanation for all of this. Maybe it's all misidentified bones, exaggerated stories, and hoaxes. But maybe, just maybe, there's something more to it. Maybe our understanding of history is incomplete, and giants did walk the earth, leaving behind tantalizing clues that we're only now beginning to uncover. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the unknown.